Hello, and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. We are your unpolished, real life podcast for homeschool moms. So I'm Amanda, and my fabulous co host is.
I'm Meagan, really rocking the unpolished because I washed my hair with the best of intentions for our recording today, and it is not blow dried. So I'm like, well, I'm showing up as my authentic self. Today, my authentic self is rushed as hell. So here I am.
Yeah, right? Okay, so that's almost the perfect lead in. I'll start with saying today we'll be talking about 2024-25 curriculum recommendations and what we're doing in our own homes. So I'll probably be leading most of the conversation because we use a lot more actual curriculum, but we'll both be talking about what the upcoming school year looks like for us in our homes. But also we have to do a check-in. We talked about doing that, right? We want to make sure people know we can put on a show, we can come, we can record, but we also have real lives and they're not always neat. In fact, they very rarely are. So let's skip ahead just a little and do today's check-in before we do our topic summary.
So my check-in is actually our messy moment for the week. And in fact, you know what? We always do it at the end of the podcast, Amanda. I'm thinking I should just toss it in now because
Do it.
That's our thing, right?
It's messy. Do it. Yep.
It's messy.
Messy moments, where homeschooling mishaps become our favorite stories.
I'm not sure if this is going to be a favorite story per se in my world, but it was messy. It qualifies on that front. So, yeah.
A story of survival. We'll get it will forever go down as a story of survival. That week in June that you survived.
Yeah, that everything went to hell in a handbasket in a matter of minutes. So I currently live in Charleston. And on Monday, we had like some rumblings of thunder. No big deal. It's the summer. It's the South. Whatever. I said, well, let me take the dog for a walk earlier than we normally do, because if we don't get out later, she'll be really cranky. And so we went out and I'm out and a little bit of thunder, but it was off in the distance. We're on our way back. The lightning's getting a little closer. She's stopping to sniff every blade of grass. I'm like, come on, girlfriend, we got to get home. Like it's lightning. We got to get home. We were not home 5 minutes and all hell broke loose. So let me tell you, if you're looking for a new rabbit hole to explore, YouTube for yourself what a downburst is. It is apparently very much, I never heard of this until this week. It is apparently very much like a tornado where it causes catastrophic damage in a very small section of geographic area in a very short period of time. And that's what landed pretty much directly on our house. So within minutes of being home, we had massive chunks of hail falling from the sky and wind and rain like you cannot even imagine, which is like, oh, no big deal. Like this happens, all over the and it was like that until a tree came through the roof and came into the bathroom, right? All the way into the bathroom. My parents live with us and it was one of their bathrooms. So next thing I know, I hit my mom is like, there is a tree in the bathroom. And it, like I said, it's apparently this downburst situation. It's very short. They timed it. They posted it on the meteorologist in Charleston posted kind of what it is. And it was like a 14-minute storm that caused catastrophic damage in this area. And so the hail ended pretty quickly. The severe wind ended pretty quickly. And we have the most amazing neighbors. So I literally ran across to a neighbor's house in knee-deep water that hadn't drained yet because the rain came so quickly, and was like, there is a tree in the bathroom. And within minutes, I mean, they're just amazing, right? Within minutes, people are here. My neighbor across the street, my husband are up on the roof. All of our teenage boys between mine and theirs are up on the roof. They've got tarps. They've got saws. They're getting the tree extricated from the roof. They're tarping the roof. They're putting, I had my kids out there once it was safe and our barbecue sits on some pavers. I was like, move the barbecue and get the pavers. And so the pavers are holding the tarp down, right? So, it's been a fucking week, let me tell you, right? I had a full week before the tree came through the roof, and now it's been, so yeah, when we were planning our podcast episode, I was like, Amanda, I haven't done shit to get us a rotating segment because it's been a week. And then I was like, well, you know what? That's the messy moment for the week then. My life is the messy moment. So yeah, if you're a roofer and you live in Charleston, I need you because there was so much damage that now there's a really big backlog to try and get somebody to come fix the roof. But it'll all get fixed. You know what? Everybody's safe. At the end of the day, it can be as big of a shit show as it wants. Like, everybody's safe. We had no notice that this storm was going to be this bad. And in a way, I'm thankful for it. A lot of people have been complaining about it. I'm thankful for it because my parents probably would have been in that bathroom hunkering, right? Doing the tornado hunker. And so in a way, I'm glad there was no notice because that's where that was their biggest, they have 2 bathrooms. That's the biggest one in their place. They have an apartment here. And that's the biggest one. That's where they would have been. And a massive pine tree came through it. So, you know, we'll get it fixed. Everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's safe. So shit happens. But how's your week, Amanda? Do you have any like palm trees coming through your place or anything?
No palm trees coming through our place. So our week is not nearly as dramatic, but still a little messy and probably also really relatable for people, right? So it's our first week of our version of summer break, which we still kind of half school during the school year, but this is like the first week of having fun. And so I had 2 play dates scheduled for tomorrow. One in the morning, we're going to go over to some friends. They also homeschool and their condo has a swimming pool. So we're going to go swim and play and have fun. And then we're going to do kind of a one-night staycation at a resort here in town because I had a free hotel night to use up. And another friend who's just finishing brick and mortar school, they're going to come and join us.
How fun.
And of course, like this morning, I woke up to the text message saying like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay. So I have a really strict rule that I don't ever tell my kiddo exactly what we're doing. I just let him know that we have fun things coming up on a certain day. Like, hey, don't make other plans. I have some surprises for you. And he gets a little annoyed that I don't share what those surprises are. But this happens so often in real life, right? People get sick, other things come up, people have to cancel for one reason or another. So it's okay. It just means that when I'm done with this and when I'm done with my meeting that I have after podcast recording, I have to go figure out what other
you need a fun thing.
Yeah, I need a new surprise that we can do and we can slot in before we go do the other, so it'll be fine. It's not a catastrophe by any means, but I also have a pretty full week. I have a lot going on and I wasn't really planning to research opening hours and, find something else fun and exciting that's not our normal, that's not in our normal rotation of things that we do. And I'm feeling the extra pressure because we just did that like end of year black chalkboard thing that everyone does for like, what are we doing for the end of the year? And the kid said on what he was looking forward to for summer was adventures with his mom. And so we really... All right.
That's so sweet and yet so much pressure. Good luck with that. That sounds fun. But so sweet.
Right, exactly. I mean, I was like, it totally melted my heart, but at the same time, like, oh, damn, I really have to step up my game. Right?
The pressure's on. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Yeah. So I was thinking like for any of us, and I know we both parent neurodivergent kids, right? The change of plans in the world of neurodivergence is like not a cool thing. So I love the fact that you kind of do that, right? We have a thing in my house where my husband can't wrap his mind around the fact that when we tell the super neurospicy kid X is happening at 4:00, it has to happen at 4:00. If not, like the only reason this isn't happening at 4 is if you're like dead on the floor, right? Otherwise, this has to happen at 4 because that's what you said, right? And I said to him, I'll tell him all the time, I'll be like, I should be ready around 4. I'm recording my podcast with Amanda, so it might run a few minutes over, but if not, I'll be ready to go as soon as we're done, right? And like, you just have to put that cushion there, like waiver of liability in there, right? Yeah. And for all this time, it's like he still hasn't figured out that like you have to put the waiver of liability. Like plans are subject to change until that moment, right? Because in the world of neurodivergent life, that's not always okay, right? When you tell him 4, it does not mean 4:02. It means 4, right? And so I'm like, watch it. So that's smart that you do that. I love that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love it. Yep. So we're messy today. All right, for sure. I've got that. But you mentioned we're talking curriculum today, Amanda?
Yeah. So, curriculum is probably the number one topic in the homeschool world. it comes up all year round. We're talking about it all year round. But in summer, especially over summer break, that's when people really start being like, oh, I want to get a jump start on it. I want to do some planning. I want to get it ordered because the delivery times are going to be longer, or I want to buy it so I can send it off to be printed somewhere. And it takes longer in the summer because everyone is getting it printed. So I need to allow 6 weeks instead of 2, or, whatever that may be. So we are recording this during the month of June. And that means that existing homeschoolers are feverishly planning, right, for their upcoming school year, unless you're an unschooler and then you're like, yo, we've already signed up for our classes that we're definitely doing, and everything else is like, it's gravy, right? It'll just roll. But for people who are a little bit more like me, I already have mine. And I will actually say our teacher that we have through our charter school here in California, she's already asking me for my first 2 months of lesson plans. I'm a little like, whoa, back off, lady. Like, summer break just started. Like,
I just took my chalkboard photo yesterday. Back off. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Like, just, I will get to it. I promise you we'll have it before we start school. But like, wow. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and look at some of the things that we're doing. We're going to look at the picks, and I want to preface this before we even get into the actual talking points with, this is what we're doing, right? I have tried a ton of things. I have thrown out a ton of things. I have sold a ton of things secondhand, or barely even opened, because it was like, I bought it and it was like, oh, that was not, or I picked it up at a, curriculum exchange and brought it home and then looked through it and was like, yeah, no, this is not right. It's okay. And by no means do we expect this to be you should homeschool with the exact same materials that we're homeschooling with. But we do hope that our insight and the reasons why we're choosing these things will be helpful for you as you are doing this, trying to figure out what you want to do and why and where and how it might slot in.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So this actually, we've been planning this for a while, and it worked out great that it's this week when I am drowning in life stuff, because we are loosey-goosey schoolers. My kids are registered for a bunch of college classes or a bunch of mentorship programs and things like that, but I don't buy curriculum. So this is going to be like the Amanda show this week, and I'm going to sit here and be like, that sounds great, Amanda. I'm so happy for you. And I'm going to look interested, and that's going to be it. So it's a great week for me to kind of minimize my mental load. But before I let Amanda take it away for the curriculum show, I want to just give a quick reminder that you can book time with Amanda or myself, or both of us. So you can find a link to book a session in the description below, in the podcast description, or in our Instagram bio. If you want to get with Amanda and nerd out about curriculum and get some advice very specific to your kiddo, come do that. If you need help writing a transcript, I'm literally presenting at a homeschool conference this week on how to write transcripts. So yeah, I mean, just about whatever topic that you would like individualized one-on-one support with, reassurance with, etc. Come book a time with us. We're more than happy to hang out and help on something that's very specific to you. But in the meantime, I'm going to let Amanda do what she loves and talk about homeschool curriculum.
All right. Yeah, I do actually. I like it probably a little too much. It's probably a little weird, but that's okay. We've talked about that. I like being weird. So, I have said before, we have a really dense, really heavy homeschool method. And so I just want to reiterate that, right? I'm going to talk about some of the high points of things that we do and things we're using and stuff that we're for sure going to use or try next year. And I don't want you to listen to all of the things that I'm talking about and be like, holy shit, we don't do anywhere close to that. And like, they say that you only have to homeschool for 60 minutes a day, or that you can finish your homeschool in 90 minutes a day. How the hell is she getting all of that done in 90 minutes a day? We are not. And we are not the norm. We're not typical. And you don't have to do what we do. If you have a similar style and a similar family makeup and your kid wants to do it, again, by all means, go for it. But you don't have to, like, don't stress yourself out trying to compare yourself to the Amandas here. I'm not trying to be a Jones. I don't need to be a Jones. I'm just Amanda, and this is what we do. So
I feel like, do you remember that 80s movie with the robot, Short Circuit? You remember him, Johnny Five?
Oh,
do you know this movie?
Don't.
Oh, okay. You totally have to. I know you don't do a lot of TV with your kiddo, but this is just like, I'll say wholesome 80s television, but then at the same time, do you ever go back and watch some of the stuff from the 80s
Yeah.
and you're like,
What the? How
whoa,
was that?
we were allowed to watch this as kids, like the spectrum of what was
Yeah.
kid friendly. I let my kids watch Big one time when they were like really little. I'm thinking we were doing like a full Tom Hanks thing like one summer,
Uh-huh.
and we did like There's No Crying in Baseball and like all that stuff. We got to Big and I was like, earmuffs. I mean, they were really small, right? I was like, earmuffs, right? This is before I really just like threw caution to the wind. So anyway, as I remember it, I was allowed to watch it as a kid in the 80s, but there's this robot. I think he gets zapped by lightning and he comes to life, and he has this like insatiable need for information. He calls it input, like need more input, right? And that's him. He's like always doing stuff. And so like your kid, you have a Johnny 5 kid. So that's it. And if you haven't watched it, okay, Short Circuit, and then also Battery Not Included, 2 classic 80s films that everyone should add it to your summer. Like when it's too hot to go outside or it's raining too much, do it. Just know that in the 80s, television censorship was very different than it is today.
It was different. Yeah.
So what is your Johnny 5 kid doing this year?
Yeah, so he really likes history. He will do a lot of things with history. But our primary history spine for our 5th grade year will be Pandia Press's History Quest. So we have been using History Quest since 2nd grade. They start with ancient times, they move into medieval times, then they have like an American history kind of component. I will say that there are better history options out there for older kiddos. If you're looking for a high school kiddo, this is not the right curriculum for you. But if you have an elementary age or a middle school age curriculum, History Quest is great. And we especially like it in our house because it has an audiobook option. So you can get the audiobook and then you can get the teacher manual and use them together. It also comes with a lot of, every week has at least 4 or 5 reading options that go along with it. And so I kind of do a month in advance. I reserve them from the library online and go pick them up. And then he has a lot of extra reading, whether it's picture books, the occasional small chapter book. We'd previously talked about Who Was. They'll sometimes include books like that. And so it's just an all around. It has a lot of things in it. And it does have hands-on components each week if you want to do those hands-on components. It also includes copy work or dictation work if that's something that you're wanting to do in your homeschool. That said, it is not the best if you have a very hands-on learner, if they really need a lot of the tactile input and they want to do projects. If that's your learner, I would probably actually look at Curiosity Chronicles. It was not the right fit for us, but it is another really good history option. It's great to be your primary spine. And both of these are less whitewashed than the average history curriculum out there. Okay. Like, let's be real. It's really easy to get like a Christian whitewashed Eurocentric history. And I'm not going to say that either one of these are completely not that, but it's much better than it could be. It's much better than what we learned when we were in school, hands down.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I'm like, I know you're not teaching anything in your homeschool that's not like that, right? But some of the stuff that we see out there is just horrifying. I mean, it's just a complete rewriting of history. It's like it's like a Mad Libs version of history. And so it's nice to know that these are actual history, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And the History Quest, they do a really good job of focusing on different regions, different areas, and talking about things. Again, there are some things that I'm like, that's not quite right. Like just last week, we were reading something about which European scientists were the first to say that the Earth actually orbited the sun instead of the other way around. And I was like, you know what? We have a book that talks about the fact that that's not true, that there were other people in other cultures who had already figured that out hundreds of years beforehand. Let's go read that book and like revisit that. And it was a great chance to be able to talk about that, that like, a lot of people don't know that. And that's not like, it's new information, but once you have that information, like it's important to reiterate that information.
Well, I think it's important too it's like a great lesson to be able to question what's in textbooks. I mean, when we were
Yeah.
younger, the textbook was the authority. There it was like
Mhm.
there was no we wouldn't have even thought to have questioned what because really smart people put these together to teach us the
Mhm.
truth, right? And
Yeah.
so I think like just even having that lesson for your kid, if it's 98% good, but then that 2% is like, we're gonna question this, it we should be questioning more things in life,
Mhm.
right? Like, is it true? Who said it? What's their motivation? What's their background? Who paid for this, right? Money is always,
Mhm.
like when you see scientific studies, who paid for this? Was it a giant pharmaceutical company that sells the drug that cures the thing, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I think that's a great lesson to be able to say, to do with a kid and be like, not everything that's in a textbook is always 100% correct. Let's fact check.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we say that a lot in our house, right? I'm always reminding him, hey, remember, history is written by the winners.
Yep.
And so you have to take that into consideration. And that doesn't make their version of history less. It just means it's not the only version, just like everything in life. We talk about that too with stories and situations and whatever happens in real life, right? There's what happened in your mind, there's what happened in their mind, and there's the truth, which is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
And you can have as many perspectives as you need to get to kind of a more accurate truth. And history is definitely one of those areas. Like I'm not going to say with science you should go around getting as many truths as you can because that's a whole other which science was my next thing to talk about. So history, get lots of facts from lots of places. Science, maybe just remember facts are facts and your opinion isn't actually a fact.
So I have a part-time job aside from all the other 900 things that I do during the week. And part of it is it's in the world of education, and I work on social media content, right? Mostly inbound content. And the amount of flat earth stuff that I hide I mean, it's just, some of it is just, yesterday there was a hashtag gravity is a hoax. I didn't even know we were questioning gravity. I didn't know.
Well,
I knew we
there
were
you
questioning
go.
that the earth was flat,
Mhm.
but whether the earth was round or not, but I didn't know we were questioning gravity. And so I just, some of the stuff that I see on some of these posts are just, I'm like, I learned about conspiracy theories I didn't even know existed in the comments. They're fantastic. So
Yeah.
science.
Yeah, right. So just last week, actually, my kiddo said, so are there can't still be people who think that the sun revolves around the earth, not the other way around, right? And I was like, buddy, there are people who think the earth is flat. I am certain there are people who still think the earth is the center of the universe. And he was like, but how? I was like, I don't know. I truly, I honestly, I don't know.
It is so sweet to see like the innocence of kids though. We were in downtown Charleston the other day and they have these horse-drawn carriage tours that are like a signature thing in Charleston. And there's animal rights groups that try to stop the horse. I mean, it's 100 and something degrees and these horses are pulling these super heavy carriages and whatever. And one went by and my daughter said something and she's like, I don't understand how people don't like acknowledge the rights of the horse. And I was like, Astrid, we're struggling to get human rights in this country, like for actual humans. I'm like, the horse is so far down on the list for most people. You and I, not so much, but like the average person, the horse is way down. But it's like so sweet to see it through their eyes where they're like, I don't understand how this isn't a priority, or I don't understand how people can think that. I'm like, no, they do.
Yeah,
It's going to be,
exactly.
you've got a lot coming to you. So just buckle up. Right?
Right? Oh man. But so on that note, we are actually wrapping up. We had been doing Generation Genius when my kiddo was smaller. We did Mystery Science. Mystery Science is really popular in brick and mortar schools as well as for homeschooling. It's pretty affordable, and I liked it because it was what's the best way to put it? Not kind of low tech. Like there wasn't a lot of flash. There's, it's not overstimulating, and we weren't doing much screen time at all as far as anything, including education goes. And so that was sort of my compromise. We did Mystery Science because it was not overstimulating, but it was an online science curriculum. My kiddo got a little bored with it last year. And so we went ahead and we did the free trial first. I'm all about the free trial, and he liked it. So we moved to Generation Genius. We paid for the annual year. And so because we did the free trial first, we'll be finishing up our year of Generation Genius subscription. If you have a kiddo who likes Emily's Wonder Lab or anything like that, they're going to enjoy Generation Genius. And one of the things that's great about it, if you're a more academic homeschooler, is they show you the science standards that you need to work on for the year and how it applies to each lesson. Or there's actually a page that has the link, like for fourth grade, you should do this, and here's an episode that covers it. For fifth grade, you should do this, and here's an episode that covers it. And if you go in, once you have a paid membership, there's a PDF that you can print off, a worksheet that goes along with it. There's a handout for reading, there's a video, and there's also an answer key, which I very much like. I don't want to have to think that hard when I'm checking his work. So like altogether, it's a great curriculum. It's a good package. Once we finish up Generation Genius, we're going to actually move on and try Science Mom. We have not tried Science Mom yet, and it's a little heavy on note-taking, which could be challenging for us because I do have a 2E kiddo, but that is one of the reasons that I want to try it, because it does really encourage more practice with that. And so I want to see how it goes. If that's a bust, we may probably look at biochemistry literacy for kids. Right. So biochemistry literacy for kids they tout themselves as college curriculum made accessible for kindergarten to 12th grade kids.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I have high hopes for it. I've been kind of waiting for a time when things were a little slow. We struggle with history and science are things that we a lot of times sign up for extra classes for fun in. And so I struggle with making sure that whatever our main spine is, it covers things that we need, that I consider necessary for our homeschool, without it being too overwhelming when we're doing an extra 2 or 3 classes in each of those subjects. So that's the only reason we've held off on biochemistry literacy for kids so far. But that should be interesting. And a little later, I'm going to talk about some of the different online options, and we'll talk about some of the fun science things that you can get from other places too. So that's our science. So we're doing Generation Genius, and then we're going to do Science Mom. She has some free options. She has some paid options. So you can definitely try it out before you dive all the way in. And then from there, we have math. Math is another one that we're wrapping up a curriculum that we have been doing, and we're going to have to change. So my kiddo has been doing Beast Academy. Beast Academy is one of those math programs that your kid is either going to love or they're going to hate. And that's okay, right? Like there's different things for different kids. If you have a mathy kid, they might really like Beast Academy. If you're going to try Beast Academy, I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please do the online placement tests. You can print them out, do them ahead of time. The grade levels do not match up. Do not think I have a second grader, so I need Beast Academy level 2. You are only setting your kid up to absolutely hate Beast Academy. And wherever they fall on that placement test, say according to Beast Academy, they're ready for 2C. Don't start at 2C. Please, for the love of all things, start at 2A or 2B, because it very quickly gets very challenging. Beast Academy is all about making them think deep, making them think in abstract ways. It really prepares kids for competitive math if they want to do math competitions and things like that, because it's just a totally different. This is not rote memorization and here's your equation and here's how to do it. It's shockingly complicated for what it's doing and what it's teaching. And some kids love it and some kids don't, but definitely start earlier than you think so that they can breeze through those first few chapters and like, this is so great and this is easy and this is fun. And they're feeling a lot of success. That way, as it ramps up into harder stuff that they don't know yet, they don't get immediately frustrated and like, this is stupid. I don't ever want to do this again.
Oh, I love that advice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Can I back up for a quick second? Because you mentioned 2E earlier, and I imagine there's plenty of people who don't know what twice exceptional is. Could you, and people are like, what on earth was that? What'd you say? So
Oh, yeah.
can you give
That's
a quick 2E explanation?
Yeah, sorry, I just totally slipped that in there and didn't even think about it. So 2E stands for twice exceptional, and that means that a child has been diagnosed as both gifted and as having a learning disability. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, that learning disability can hide the giftedness because of the way that they interact together. So it does impact what you need to do with your child and how you need to help them access information for success. So a lot of our decisions and how we access things, whether it's an audiobook here or trying a class that is a little easy for him, but it includes note taking, which is not a strength, and putting those two things together to see how it goes. These are all things that I'm taking into consideration, given that my child has been diagnosed as a 2E learner.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for catching that.
Yeah. And there's Facebook groups for homeschooling 2E kids or just 2E kids in general. So if you're a 2E mom, there's plenty of resources out there for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this is the first time you're hearing it and you're going, "Oh my gosh, I have a 2E kid. I didn't know that was the label. I didn't know there are lots of resources. So please come find us. You'll see me there, I'm sure."
Exactly.
And so yeah, so we're doing Beast Academy. He's only got a few units left in it, so we'll probably finish before Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, and at that point we will move into their next level from that company. That's art of problem solving, and I'm not positive how that's going to go. They also offer placement tests, so we'll give that a try, and we'll probably try one semester of it and see if it's a win or not before we decide what we're going to do next. If Beast Academy doesn't work for you, you have a kid who's not super mathy, or you need a little bit more just kind of traditional structure to your math curriculum, I'm going to say I do really like Singapore Dimensions math. It's fairly new as far as Singapore math options go, but the Dimensions curriculum, it's nice. It's got a pretty easy parent handbook to follow along, the student textbook, and then a workbook. The workbook is a little dense. I personally would recommend, if you're going to use the Singapore Dimensions curriculum, take the workbook, assign the even problems or the odd problems. If your kiddo gets them all right, move on to the next unit and don't worry about it. If they're struggling, then you can use the other half of the problems. But it does have a lot of math problems that you probably don't necessarily need to do all of. And it also encourages a lot of hands-on manipulatives, which I think is good for math, especially in the early years. It can be really helpful to have that piece. And if, unfortunately, in my opinion, most of the really good math curriculums are not particularly cheap. They're not insanely expensive, but you're looking at least $100 a year kind of thing, a bare minimum for like the good math curriculums. But there is Khan Academy. Khan Academy, it's free, it's solid, it's got videos that walk kids through it. Then there's kind of practice problems and little quizzes and things like that, so you have a good idea if they're getting it or not getting it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're really thinking, I can't do this, or I don't know what we're going to do, or I'm not sure what, and I just need them to be doing some math, by all means, it's there. It's a really valuable resource that's been put out. And, you don't need to turn your nose up at it just because you assume like, well, it's free, it can't be very good. It's actually pretty good.
And it's been around that's been around for as long as I've been homeschooling and beyond. So it's been around for ages, which is really awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
They're kind of one of those, the proof is in the pudding, right? They wouldn't still be around and be as popular if
there's easy peasy homeschooling and power homeschool, so I'm not quite sure.
That's true.
And how many posts a day do you see for easy peasy and power homeschooling, right?
Yeah.
The Khan Academy is not in that same category.
No, yeah. Yeah. We'll just say that. Khan Academy. If you're going to go with a free curriculum, go look at Khan Academy, please. And actually, this is not exactly this, but if you're looking at free stuff, Fish Tank Learning is also good. It's not the same setup in any way, shape, or form, but they have ELA that wraps in social studies and history. And it is also a great example of not being insanely whitewashed. So, off the top of my head, I'm thinking we did a Thanksgiving unit that read a few different books. And one of them, and I was really like, oh, I heard really good things about this. And now I'm kind of worried. One of them had the Magic Treehouse book on pilgrims. There's like a fact checker book that's actually not a very good fact checker book. And I was like, really, we're supposed to read that? And like, but we read it. And then we talked about, there was a lot of discussion around the idea of who tells history and the words that they use. Do we agree with the words that they use to describe these people? Do we think that they should have used different terminology? And really using it in that way and helping kids see like, well, I enjoyed this story, but it wasn't exactly the best way to do it. You know, I'm struggling with the most polite way to say this. I know we're unfiltered, but I don't want to be an absolute ass. But yeah, so it definitely encourages critical thinking. We'll put it that way. And so I guess actually, well, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, I've seen people say things too, like, well, how do I know if it's whitewashed? Like, they take it at face value because that's how they learned it. So how do you know that, right? And so sometimes it's just a matter of you all doing a little bit of research and investigation together. I mean, I had a scenario, my daughter was doing a project, this has got to be 5 years ago, where she was doing a project on the cotton gin. And she came to me, she went off and did all this research, and she came to me and she's telling me all this stuff about the cotton gin. And I was like, girlfriend, where'd you research that? None of this sounds accurate, right? And so she shows me her sources, we dive in, and it was all this stuff. And I'm like, I either have a false recollection or was taught complete crap in school. But basically, I remember having this line of thought that the cotton gin was like amazingly helpful, right? Because it made work more simple. When you dive into it, the numbers of people being enslaved to farm cotton skyrocketed with the invention of the cotton gin, because the gin part made it easier, but then there was more need to plant and pick. And so the cotton gin was actually one of the worst things they could have, but that's not what I learned in school. And so it literally, it wasn't me saying to her, let's investigate this, because I'm not so sure this is, I thought she was completely off her rocker. I was like, none of that is true. Where'd you get this whacked out information? And then when we actually researched it, I was like, holy shit, this is true. And everything that I thought I knew about, I'm like, what else do I not know? Right. So sometimes if you don't have to know all of this to be able to investigate things that are not true history, things that are whitewashed, because I literally learned that one on the fly thinking my kid was nuts. And I was like, oh, wait, it turns out she was totally correct. And what she found on the internet was true. We went to a local museum and they confirmed everything. I was like, oh, this is so not what I learned in history class. Right. So you don't have to know all of it. You can do it together, right? You can grow and learn together, because a lot of what we learned wasn't true.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. So, so speaking of whitewashed and Eurocentric curriculum, the one that we do enjoy quite a bit that is quite whitewashed and Eurocentric, I'll just put that out there. For ELA, we really enjoy Michael Clay Thompson. Michael Clay Thompson, he's an older white man, and he uses a lot of the classics, and he includes Caesar's English in his curriculum for stems and roots and Latin words and things like that, right? It's very Eurocentric as far as curriculum goes. It is oftentimes recommended for gifted learners for ELA. And we were struggling with ELA, and I decided to give it a try. And my kid really, really loved it. He loves the stories. It's got a lot of fun stories where, I don't know, fish and seagulls talk about how sentences should come together and the importance of order in paragraphs so that you don't have chaos. And just, it's a fun way, the way that it's presented. Someone online had recently asked if I only wanted to pay for a couple of books. It's a very expensive curriculum as well. So definitely, if you're looking at it, see if you can find it secondhand. But someone was asking if I was only going to include one or two of the books, which ones should I buy? Which ones can I leave out? And I was kind of like, well, I don't really think I'd leave any of them out personally. It really does work well all together. Then I thought, well, you know what? Let me go to the kid and ask him, like, which ones do you think you don't need? And he was like, honestly, you need all of them. They all go well together. Without it, and I was like, oh, okay,
Aw.
there you go. Right. Like he thinks they all go well together. And it's funny, there's every unit ends with poetics. So you do your whole year, and the last is like a month worth of poetics that you work in with some other things. And every year when we get to the end and I'm like, okay, can you get the poetics book out? He's always like, poetics. And then I swear by like the third day, he's writing poems, he's writing songs, he's composing music to go with his songs. His stuffies are in a band and they put out a CD. It's, yeah, he really likes it. And even when he thinks that he's not going to like it, like he goes all in on it. That's kind of his personality. If he likes something more, we're all in. We now have a Lego CD player because we don't have a real CD player in our house. So that's
Are there people when you said CD, I was like, what decade is she homeschooling in? I'm not really sure.
I was like, it's kind of funny because the device that apparently plays the albums looks very much like a record player, but I was informed that it's a CD player. And then I got a CD, homemade. Obviously, it's all homemade with aluminum foil and cardboard, right? And it comes in a sleeve that looks like a record sleeve, but it's a CD. And, so I'm going to say the 10-year-old's a little confused about what he considers ancient technology. He listens to podcasts and he can just ask his Alexa to play whatever music he wants. So I'm going to give him a pass, right?
Exactly. At least he knows what CDs and records are, kind of, sort of. Like, it's a little jumbled, but he's got it, right? It's an important context in history. So
yeah, right. In history. Oh my God. How old are we? We're walking history. There we go.
If they put out an 8-track, I'm gonna need to know right away. Okay, like I'm gonna need like an urgent text message if an 8-track comes into the discussion.
Yeah, we'll do. Oh gosh. Okay, so back to ELA. We have a couple other things that we're doing. So actually, this year we're trying out a new option. I think it just came out in the last year or two. It's called Hearth and Story. It's kind of an all-in-one ELA curriculum that's really affordable. It's a digital download that you then print yourself if you want. They only have 5th and 6th grade out so far. In my mind, from looking through it, it looks pretty fun and fairly easy. Not that they aren't learning good things and doing stuff, but I think, easy enough that like he'll enjoy working through it. It won't be a slog. And so we're going to go ahead and give that a try and see what that is like. I'm seeing some good things. I'm hearing some good things. So Hearth and Story is what that one's called. Worth maybe checking out if you're looking for something for 5th or 6th grade. And then in our home, we do need to focus on explicit writing instruction. So we do, technically Michael Clay Thompson includes writing in it, but that we don't do much with that. And so we will continue with Step Up to Writing, which is a curriculum that is incredibly hard to get your hands on if you're homeschooling. So I'm just going to put that out there. I think it's a great curriculum. You can get units. Well, you can watch videos on how to implement it on YouTube, and you can get affordable little unit studies on Teachers Pay Teachers. But the actual textbook and curriculum, it's really hard to get your hands on. So, I don't necessarily recommend trying to get the teacher's book and the principal, all the extra things. But it is a great writing curriculum if you have a kid who's struggling. It's all about color coding your paragraphs. That helps you understand, like, your topic sentence is green, and then, your next level is yellow, and then all of your details are red, and it helps kids really see what they're supposed to be doing. And it also focuses a lot on graphic organizers and helping kids find the right kind of graphic organizer for each type of thing they're writing. And really, if you have a kiddo who's struggling, it is an option to look at for writing instruction, explicit writing instruction. So those are kind of like our main big things, right? Those are our main core things that we do every day. I know not everyone does all of those things every day, and that's okay. um, and then once we go from there, we get into all of our extras. So we do Spanish. For Spanish, we have a variety of things. No one in our house is fluent in Spanish, so teaching our kids Spanish is definitely outsourced. We have a combination of books that come with audio, and so he can practice reading and hearing audio by a native Spanish speaker. One option for that is 1/3 stories. They are kids' picture books, but it's a really neat idea. It's a subscription box, but the books themselves they start out in the stories, the first couple pages, it's all in English. And then it starts throwing in a couple Spanish words. And then by the end of the book, it's like at least half Spanish and half English. And then it comes with note cards and some workbook pages and some hands-on things to do along with it. And there's an app where you listen to a native speaker who goes over the vocabulary as well as reads the story. So it's a good thing. They definitely have Spanish and French, and I think they might have German and maybe something else, but don't hold me to that. So that's an option if you're looking for some foreign language or other language help there. Or even I have a friend who lives here in Southern California. She's from a French-speaking country. Her kiddo goes to a French school, and she was like, how in the hell do I find French books? And I was like, oh, actually, I wanted my kid to learn French because French is what I know. And so I had bought 1/3 stories in French, and then he was like, yeah, I don't want to do French. I want to do Spanish. I was like, of course you do. I have all of these. But so I gave her the books, right? And I was like, oh, actually, I have like a dozen books that have a bunch of French in them. And so this is a great way for you to be able to practice, because it's really hard to find kids' books in foreign languages for them to practice that reading and comprehension. So that's an option. And then we also do online classes. We personally have found a great teacher for us on OutSchool. So we do our Spanish classes on OutSchool. Beyond that, we also have chess. That's considered a school subject in our house. So he does chess at least once or twice a week. And that looks for us like Chess Kids. He will play on Chess Kids. He will also do some books. He's got a few different books that he can kind of work through challenges and learn openings. And I don't play chess, so I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, openings and closings. And I suppose there's middles or something. I don't know.
I watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Does that qualify me? Right?
That was so good, right? That's
really
basically, that's basically all I know about
the chess
chess.
parts. I just kind of, my eyes glazed over, but the rest of it was amazing.
Right? Yeah, totally. And then we do random online lessons and some random like kind of virtual classes and tournament plays and things like that, just for fun. In our house, we also do art, and at this point, we focus mainly on techniques classes. And those are a lot harder to find than one would think, but we look around different places and we have found them. We do, like last year, he did colored pencil techniques. He did an oil, pastel, and watercolor class that talked about the techniques, and they worked on those kinds of things. And so we'll do something similar along those same lines next year because he really enjoyed it. And we also do SEL classes online. You can find curriculum that you can do at home. There are options online, a lot of different vendors and providers. We do it through our California public charter school in a virtual class, but there are also classes on OutSchool and other places as well. So
you want to share what SEL is, Amanda?
Oh, I think a lot of people who are like just starting out know this, but SEL is social emotional learning. So it's a big jargon word in public schools. Almost every public school is now doing SEL and has some kind of SEL curriculum that they are using. So yeah. And from there, I was going to say, let's talk about some online classes and resources for online classes. This is something that you can definitely chime in on. I have a few I'll talk about, but where do you usually find online classes for your kids, Meagan?
So kid-focused online classes, we are pretty OutSchool focused. We have been using OutSchool since 2017, before the rest of the world realized you could use Zoom for education. So We've been using OutSchool for a long time. And my kids have kind of ebbed and flowed as far as the way they use OutSchool. So my youngest is on there the most. He's got a writing tutor, he's got a handwriting tutor for things that he struggles with but wants to improve upon for his own personal benefit. One-on-one is best. He does not do well in a group environment when he's not easily excelling at something. The panic sets in, the spiral is real. So one-on-one where it's just him and a teacher who can meet him where he is amazing. So he's got a handwriting, and his handwriting, oh my goodness, right? So my kiddo has a slew of diagnoses. Handwriting is often a challenge for neurodivergent kids. And so that's been amazing. Math, completely outsourced math because my kid is like, you know, ridiculously good at math, and I am not. So that went to someone else. So that's been amazing. So yeah, we use OutSchool a whole bunch. My oldest is in college now. He's taking 9 credits this summer, but he's on OutSchool. He does a couple of gaming classes. He plays Pokemon with some kids on OutSchool and stuff like that. So he's not taking as many content-driven classes, I would say, on OutSchool anymore, but he enjoys the social nature of being able to go on and game with other kids who like the same games he does. He's a big Pokemon nerd, so that's been fun for him. So we've done that. Online stuff that my kids have done otherwise, a lot of the stuff they're doing is not necessarily geared towards kids. My daughter attends most of the webinars that the Victoria and Albert Museum in London host. They bring on some incredible guest speakers and host really amazing topics. There was one on Coco Chanel. When you talk about, bastardizing history, Coco Chanel's probably one of the greatest examples. She was literally living in Nazi headquarters, having an affair with a high-ranking German officer, and yet somehow she's like the toast of fashion history. So mainly because those records were sealed until about 10 years ago. And so no one really knew that until then. But now it's pretty well known. So it's time we kind of break that empire, break that historical fallacy down of her amazing contribution to fashion. And so they hosted one of those, and it was hilarious. I was in the shower and she was watching it. Next thing I know, she was in the bathroom sitting on the floor, just sitting there ranting about how inaccurate some of the things that the guest speaker was saying about, Chanel and things like that. So yeah, she pays, I think, £6, 6 Great British pounds for, each one or something. And she doesn't even ask. I mean, my kids are teens and they never abuse money or anything like that. Like I just see a registration come through and I'm like, oh, we're taking a class on tapestry through the V&A. Okay. So they've got that. We have the higher level Duolingo. We've got like the pro subscription to Duolingo. So we've got some online stuff like that. But the other thing that's pretty cool is I think the pandemic really jump-started this was people who have skills of some sort, right? Whether it's like they're like this amazing croissant baker or, they're an amazing embroidery artist. People started building out more online classes, I feel like, during the pandemic. And so there's some really awesome options of that, especially if your kid is it's like a hands-on thing or an art or a trade or something like that. So like my daughter follows this artist out of Australia who does sculptural embroidery. And she offers a class twice a year. Last year, it didn't fit into her calendar in the sense that when the person was offering it, it conflicted with her like heavier parts of her semester for her college school classes. But this year she actually took the January semester off in order to be able to take 2 classes elsewhere that she wanted to take. So it was funny because it was like she took off school, and you could see people who have like a traditional mindset of school were like, what do you mean you just let her take a semester off school? I'm like, right, because she wanted to take 2 other classes that also dovetail into the things that she does. So there's so much out there, and it all counts, right? It's all school, it all counts, it's all awesome. So yeah, so ours are probably a little bit less traditional education focused, except for OutSchool and heavy duty math and things like that. But there's just so much out there. It's like we need more hours in the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that was one of the points that I wanted to make with the online classes, right? If you want to outsource super academic things, you can do that. And that is totally fine. You are allowed to homeschool however works in your home. If you want them to take a year of science or a year of math or a year of ELA, there are classes out there. It's pretty easy to find. There are lots of providers of that. By all means, go for that. But you can also use all of these resources to find interesting things. So I had in my list of places to make sure I highlighted for online classes that we have done or will do. So we've got OutSchool, the Johns Hopkins CTY program, which is the Center for Talented Youth. They have online classes you can take throughout the year. We'll probably try something from Online G3, which is another online program that caters a lot to gifted students. We may revisit Athena's Academy. They have both a homeschool regular academy and an advanced academy for gifted kids. There's Next Level Homeschooling. There's Spark Learning Pals. There's all kinds of options out there, right? And so you can do your regular traditional curriculum if you want. But I went on some of these ones that I recommended and found the interesting classes because I want to make sure people know you can have fun learning, right? That is what homeschool is about. So from Online G3, you can do Horrible History and Horrible Science, and they're based on that those book series about the horrible histories and horrible science. It's kind of like a comic graphic novel kind of thing. It's a fun way to learn about that. They have modern U.S. history through movies, biology, beavers, bees, oh my, multidisciplinary approach to life science, right? You can get the things you need in a fun, interesting way. The CTY program at Johns Hopkins, they have book clubs where kids learn to cite their sources while focusing on books that are about dragons and robots and, all kinds of things, right? Like it doesn't have to be a slog on this is how you research and cite sources. There are fun ways to learn these topics.
I'd go so far as to say it shouldn't be a slog. Like if you're slogging, find something else. Right?
Yeah, find a better, there's a better way, an easier way.
Nobody's benefiting from that, right? You're just doing it for the sake of doing it at that point. The kid is not engaged. They're not going to remember it. It's not going to stick because you're slogging. So if you are, find something else. There's a million ways to do it. So find something else.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So some options from Next Level, they have, they do a genetics class, science class that looks at mythical beasts from Harry Potter. So I know Harry Potter's, it can be a bit questionable, but you don't have to buy the Harry Potter book. You're just genetically engineering and modifying mythical beasts from the story. So that's a fun one. They have the history of student protests coming up in the fall. They've got a comparative world mythology class, right? There's a lot of fun things. Then you go Athena's. They have conceptual physics. I was like, oh, I want to take that. Do you think they would notice that I'm a grown up in there? And then other interesting things, right? There's an intro to public health. With everything that's happened, I'm sure there are some kids that would enjoy doing that for science over chemistry or whatever other kind of science thing. You're like, oh, we have to do this. Like, why not talk about public health if that's something that your kiddo's interested in? And I think there are a lot that are. There's also world religions and Avatar. I'm like, okay, well, that's an interesting. I'd be curious how that comes together. And there's also a world religions and sustainable development. I know a couple kids who would absolutely be totally into that. Like that's kind of a big thing here in Southern California. There's some great summer camps and things around sustainable development. And I can only imagine how interesting that would be. I know specifically, I'm going to share it with a friend who they're Jewish and Methodist. And he's super into sustainable development. And I'm just like,
winner on all fronts.
This class, right? Like how interesting. And he's the kind of kid that loves to absorb information as well. So, and then, you go to OutSchool. So there's, you can learn French through calligraphy. There's, aerodynamics and paper airplanes where kids make 2 different paper airplanes every week and then learn why one works this way and one doesn't work that way. And the differences. There's student newspaper, which is actually a really hard thing to find if you're homeschooling. There's cake decorating, which is talk about fine motor skills and life skills and all kinds. And then also,
project planning, troubleshooting, overcoming obstacles, right? And everything that you have mentioned, right? I mentioned that today I was working on a presentation for speaking about transcripts this weekend. Every single thing that you've brought up fits on a transcript, right?
Absolutely.
And literally the final slide of my transcript presentation says, like, you don't mold your homeschooling to the transcript. The transcript molds around the experience that you've had. You build the learning experience that your kids need for their long-term goals, and it works for the way your child learns. The transcript works around you, not the other way around. So like all this stuff fits. It all works.
Yeah, a transcript, it's not made of metal. You get to fill it in and move it all around. And, another interesting one from Outschool that I know my kid really enjoyed was World War II and the Wizarding World. Um, they're interesting ways. If you have a kid who really liked the Wizarding World, I'm basically code word for Harry Potter, right? And you need to do some history and you're not really sure how you're going to convince them that they want to learn about history. You can learn about World War II and Harry Potter and talk about that intersection. And it's academic. It counts as schoolwork. Just because it's fun doesn't mean that it doesn't count, right? That's the whole point of homeschooling, is that you get to find fun ways to learn. You get to bring back the joy and the curiosity in learning. And there's so many options out there.
Isn't that a sad statement about society as a whole? That it's like, we've come to a place where we think, like, if the kids are having fun, then this is extra. This is not okay, right?
Yeah.
The work part has to be awful and we have to slog through it, and we have to do it because we have to do it. And if they're having fun, then that's just extras. That's icing on the cake, but the cake is made of crap, right? Like, so it's like, but it's not, that's not how it has to work, right? So, no, not okay.
Yeah, no, totally. Kind of beyond that, the one last thing that I'm going to plug that we're definitely going to do for 24-25 school year is we're going to do some additional class and work through iCivics. It's icivics.org. Because it's an election year, they always have great stuff, but during an election year, they're going to have a lot of extra great stuff. Last year, we got to do a virtual Zoom. That's kind of an oxymoron, right? But we got to do one with Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court Justice. It was amazing. And I'm still certain that my kid didn't understand how incredibly lucky he was, because I was like in the background, like totally freaking out, like, oh my God, we're doing a class with Sonia Sotomayor. Like, this is so cool. Right.
Like,
and he
fangirling.
was like, yeah, I was 100% fangirling. And so they offer a ton of great one-off seminar things and things you can download and curriculum and all kinds of stuff. So we'll definitely be using some of that this coming fall. And then you have PE, right? And depending on where you are, what you have to do for PE, what you record, lots and lots and lots of people record things like playing in the backyard and jumping on the trampoline, and they count that as PE. We live in a condo. We don't have a trampoline in our backyard. And if you fell off the trampoline on the balcony, it would be deadly. So, we don't do that. We have a little bit more organized. In years past, we've had swim lessons that counted as our PE, and we do still sometimes count swimming as PE if we've gone on vacation and had a pool at the hotel or something like that. But for us, he's doing golf. Again, talk about a Eurocentric whitewashed PE curriculum. And then he has also recently really gotten into parkour. So we count that, right? He's doing golf and parkour as our PE, and that when we're done, right? He enjoys it and he gets great physical activity, and it's not the boring, like, you have to learn how to do all of these things and
badminton and climb this rope and
what do you mean you don't want to do sit-ups and push-ups and learn volleyball and
my oldest child's transcript has Pokemon Go for his PE, and my daughter thought that I was bananas for putting that. She was like, you just made that up. That's like not okay. And I said, first of all, the Pokemon Go app tracks how far you walk. And he pulled up his stats, and he had walked like 1,200 kilometers playing Pokemon Go or something ridiculous. So I'm not a Pokemon player, but there's a thing where you hatch an egg, and then within 12 hours, you have to walk like 4 miles or something in order for the egg to do something. I don't know. Right. So I will never forget. We were in a hotel 2 summers ago. My daughter was at a weaving conference, and my boys were entertaining themselves all day long playing Pokemon Go. We were in Knoxville. And so they were, going to different places and playing Pokemon Go. And they had done something with an egg, and they needed to walk X amount of distance, and it had gotten late at night, and it was dark, and I was ready for bed and all this kind of stuff. And I just put like a towel in the hotel room door, and they walked up and down the corridor in the Marriott for hours. I mean, I don't even know what time. They probably came back at like 2-3 in the morning, but they had to get their mileage in order for the egg to hatch or whatever they were doing. Right. And so I was like, that is physical education. Like, they were being physical, they were moving their bodies, the whole thing. And I was joking. So I went to an all girls school. And so there was a lot that was missing from our education because we were girls. And one of the things was PE was not super strong as a result. And so we used to have a thing where we would go to the soccer field and it was called run walk. And you could play a sport in the middle. You could do badminton, you could do volleyball, whatever. Or if you didn't want to do those things, you could just run walk. And so my best friend from high school, Erin, and I, we nicknamed it drag schlep. And so we were like, we're not running or walking. We're just going to drag schlep and like shoot the shit for all of PE. Right. And so I said to my daughter, if I could graduate high school with 4 years of drag schlepping around a soccer field and it counted as PE, his Pokemon Go counts, right? That's part of what we talk about when I talk about transcripts is like, do you really think the public school can account for every single hour that kid did ELA? Of course they freaking can't, because they got interrupted for field trips and assemblies and this, that, and the other thing, right? They can't account for every single hour. We're not doing anything different that the school system isn't doing. So if drag schlep counts, so does Pokemon Go, right? So yeah, it can be anything. I mean, paddleboard, swim team, horseback ride, whatever, right? I mean, whatever. Farm
Urban
chores
hikes.
for kids. Yeah.
Yeah, for
all
sure.
of it. It all counts.
It's interesting that you bring that up. It threw me back right to being in high school. And for me, I thought that my high school PE curriculum was dumb. I still do for the most part, right? There was not much value there. And I had a lot of other things that I wanted to do with that time. And my school was really adamant that I had to take PE, but I have always been that person. And so I went and I looked at the actual rules, and the actual rules said that if I wanted to take academic classes during PE and study hall, if I was willing to give up study hall, which frankly I found was a really annoying waste of my time as well, because again, my kid, he comes by it honestly. So I went to the school. Well, actually, I was also that kid. So first I put it in the student newspaper, and then I went back to the principal and showed them the ruling and the rules, and had written up a whole thing about how they had to allow me to register for these extra classes that I wanted to take and waive the PE requirement, because the state required I be allowed to take additional academic classes as opposed to PE if that's what I wanted. And so I think my last maybe 2.5 years of high school, I took no PE because I just filled it up with extra classes that I wanted to take.
Well, who wants to get sweaty in the middle of the day and then go sit in math class? Like, what an awful existence anyway,
Yeah.
right?
And who wants to sit next to the kid who did that? I mean, that's a whole other thing, like.
A whole room full of them. The teacher, imagine, right? Yeah, not pleasant, right? So there's a million ways that you can achieve the same thing. It does not all have to look the same at all.
Yep.
Before we wrap ourselves up for the day, we want to give a quick shout out to our premier sponsor, Hub of Curiosity. Hub of Curiosity has an incredible variety of classes, from Lego math to engaging book clubs to filmmaking. There's truly something for everyone. They're an inclusive organization and can't wait to welcome your child to an upcoming class. You can find a link to their class listing in the description of our podcast or in our Instagram bio. All Homeschool Moms Unfiltered listeners can use code OFCUR115, OFCUR115 for $15 off a Hub of Curiosity class. So yeah, that is almost kind of the full skinny on curriculum for the week, right? Or for this episode. Amanda, that was amazing. Like, I learned, I'm not a curriculum person. I've never bought a stitch of curriculum. And I loved it. I even as a non-curriculum person, I was like, it was just fun to watch you do your thing partially too, right? And to like watch somebody talk about something that they truly enjoy and that they love, even if it's not of interest to you, it's like a contagious thing. So I enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you for everyone who's listening, for listening to me kind of get on my curriculum soapbox for however long I was on there, probably too long. I appreciate it. And also, thank you for joining us again this week. Before we wrap up with our weekly mantra, we're just going to remind you that you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a social media presence as well as our podcast. So please go give us a like or two and follow. Please follow us on your favorite social media platform. We really appreciate it as we work to grow our presence and get our name out there. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode with our weekly mantra. Here's to homeschooling. May we lead the charge into the unknown, armed with caffeine, yes, please, and sarcasm, double yes, please. We shall emerge victorious.
With caffeine, I can do all things, right? That's
Yes. God,
I love
yes.
it. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this week. We'll have a second episode this week, which is another episode talking about Jonathan Mooney's book, Normal Sucks. He's our author visit that's coming up next month, in the month of July as well, which is super exciting. So we hope to see you again soon. And in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Have a good one.